Mike and Virginia Chevalier are not only Broncos fans, diehard Broncos fans at that, but they've supported DNVR for a long time and are DNVR members. They're a husband and wife team with over 15 years of financial experience, with your home being one of your largest assets and your mortgage being your largest debt. They believe it's vital to consider your full financial picture when purchasing a home. This includes considering your short-term and long-term planning goals, your investments, and your tax situation. Mike and Virginia will work tirelessly to find the best loan for your situation when you visit them at dnvrmortgage.com and enter to win a free DNVR shirt or hat when you do. But most importantly, get set up with that free consultation to discuss all of your options. That's Mike and Virginia Chevalier. Call them at 303-257-6578. Michael Chevalier, NMLS number 1931006, and Virginia Chevalier, NMLS number 1910631.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. Two goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. Three for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number four, we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, no matter how Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friendly orange and blue till the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Victory Monday on the DNVR Broncos podcast. Thank you to everyone who is joining us here today. RK and Zach with you. Zach, my man, how you feeling today?
Oh, doing fantastic. Like you said, Victory Monday, 2 in a row. Ryan, the Broncos are undefeated in October right now. Just keep rolling along. And they get to sit back and watch their next opponent play this afternoon.
Exactly. Of course, the DNVR Broncos podcast is presented by MSU Denver. Head over to msudenver.edu/online to scope out all they have to offer. We're talking 750 classes, 40 plus hybrid programs, anything that you need. There's a chance that they have it over at msudenver.edu/online. So head over there, check out everything they have to offer for you for your online education, rigorous and affordable programs. We have a couple people over here at DNVR who have hopped in on the opportunities over at MSU Denver, and they absolutely love it. So again, msudenver.edu/online today.
My boy, Ryan, what is up, man? Like you said, Victory Monday, 2 in a row. It feels so good today.
It does, and it feels good for us. But there's a lot of people out there who, much to my shock, are not as excited about this game. There's a lot of people out there, Broncos fans, not, just naysayers, who are saying that the Broncos were lucky to win. That the only reason they won is because the Patriots couldn't practice, and most notably, they're saying that Drew Lock was terrible, and that the Broncos won in spite of Drew Lock. What do you think of that last sentence there, Zach? The Broncos won in spite of Drew Lock.
Well, I haven't seen the Broncos fan base be this divided on a performance from
a win.
Yeah, from a win in forever, especially what the Broncos have been through with their quarterback situation, what they've been through with their win-loss record recently in the past couple of years. I was shocked to see so much divide over this. And Ryan, if Cam Newton completes that pass on 4th down, and let's say that the Patriots end up winning that game, then I think this is flipped on its head. I think the smaller majority, or the smaller amount of people, are saying that Drew Lock didn't play well, and I think there's a large majority that are saying he did play well. If the Broncos lose, it's flipped on its head. So Drew Lock definitely gets favored because of the win, and he helped them with that. But there were a lot of things that were, I guess, concerning, not ideal. And so I understand where those people are coming from, but I also don't think it's hard to say when he hits guys 4 times for touchdowns, or at least 3, because that happened on 3 drives, that, you can't factor those things in either. And you can't factor, I guess you have to factor in that Drew Lock got them in position to score their 6 first possessions. Now, the defense helped him out big time in 2 of them, but still Drew Lock guided them to scoring in 4 of their possessions. Now, does Drew Lock and the offense need to learn how to finish? Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Not just in the game, but in that drive, in all of those drives. So certainly there's growing pains here, but isn't it good to learn when you win?
Absolutely. And Zach, I think the biggest problem here is that we've lost our ability to bring nuance into conversations online. This is a nuanced conversation that you have to have about Drew Lock. It can't just be Drew Lock was amazing or Drew Lock was terrible. It is very much somewhere in between. But I'm definitely much closer to the side of Drew Lock was amazing. Now, I wouldn't go as far as using the word amazing, but I'm much closer to Drew Lock was very, very good in this game. And the stats and the scoreboard simply don't reflect it. So what I did, Zach, is I woke up this morning and I said, I want to know exactly what it was. Because, yesterday I was just throwing around numbers. Oh, Drew Lock could have had 300 yards and 4 touchdowns if his wide receivers just caught the ball. Well, I was wrong about that. But I did go back and I watched every throw from the game and I said, what would have happened if Drew Lock's receivers actually caught the ball? So if you eliminate the 4 biggest drops from the game, and you can't do that, but I just for a thought exercise, I wanted to do it. If you eliminate the 4 biggest drops from the game, Drew Lock finishes this one 14 of 21 for 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Now, I took away the interceptions because if you have those catches, the Broncos are up 33-9 late in the game. There's no way that they're throwing the ball in those situations. So again, this is extremely presumptuous, and it's a complete hypothetical scenario, but I just wanted to know how good it actually could have been had that happen. And I think what the reality should have been is somewhere in between what we saw and what I, uncovered here. Probably should be like 12 of 23 for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. And who knows what happens with the interceptions. But, you're always going to have drops. 3 drops in the end zone and 1 on the 3-yard line. And by the way, I only gave them 33 points because they couldn't finish in the red zone, and Deshaun Hamilton wasn't going into the end zone on that catch. So it could have easily been 37 points if these guys haul in everything. You can't always expect that. But that's just, to me, this illuminates what somewhere in between there is what Drew Lock should have been. I think he ended up with the worst possible stat line for how good he played.
Yeah, the stat line is just incredible that it's a 34 passer rating. So, Ryan, you went to one extreme saying you take away all the drops and mistakes and, 3 touchdowns, that sort of game, no picks. Just looking at what his stat line was, I'm gonna shed light on another side of this, the complete opposite, Ryan, because a buddy texted me last night and said 10 for 24, 189 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 34.9 passer rating. That is a Tim Tebow stat line right there. And I couldn't disagree. It is a Tim Tebow stat line, but of course, like you said, Ryan, you need to go past just the numbers to look at this. And, add the W on there because Tim Tebow got wins as well. But you do have to go past the stat line. And there's going to be 2 extremes. And the good thing is, Ryan, with this, we don't have to decide if you're giving Drew Lock a 5-year, $200 million extension right now. So the people that think he's bad, well, see how he bounces back against Kansas City next week. Then the next week against the Chargers, where that'll be a very interesting matchup with Justin Herbert. People that think he was great, well, can he keep up with Patrick Mahomes? If he can keep up with Patrick Mahomes, then yeah, it's going to be very hard to ignore the 3 touchdowns that were dropped. So the truth of where his game was somewhere in the middle. You don't play a 34 passer rating game and beat Bill Belichick, no matter how bad their offense is. You just don't. Now, you also 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter. That is very, very hard to win a game when you do that. And the Broncos have done it 2 weeks in a row now, which is pretty darn incredible. You don't want to have to try to do that every single week. That's for sure.
And and there's always going to be people who say, I'm taking the homer look at this. I just want to point out Pro Football Focus, who has actually been low on Drew Lock in some of his good games, came out and said it very well could have been the best game of his career. And so, I'm not the only one saying this. If you watch the game, you watch the film, you know that this very well could have been the best game of Drew Lock's career had his receivers made a few plays for him. Like I said, the reality is probably somewhere in between. You're not going to get every tough catch from your receivers. Even, the one on the second one on Albert Okwuegbunam. He had it knocked out of his hands. Is that a drop? Well, kind of. I thought he could have done a much better job protecting the ball after he got it into his hands. But in the end, that's a nice play from the defense. So that goes into my point of you can't expect them to make every play. Now, a few things that I think we need to acknowledge here. I think that if this exact game happened last year and it was Drew Lock's 8th start or 7th, if you take away that Pittsburgh game, which I kind of do. If it was Drew Lock's 7th or 8th start and he started week 1 last year, I really think people would be giving him a lot more of the benefit of the doubt, especially because the Broncos would be 5-3 or 5-2, depending on your perspective here. And everyone would be saying, look, man, Broncos just keep winning football games, and Drew Lock is the leader of this team. But because he had, he came in when the Broncos were cooked for last season, and he comes in this season when the Broncos are down 1-3, I think it really changes everyone's perspective. Everyone's in a hypercritical mood. That's one thing that I want to point out. Do you agree?
Yes, but I do still think there would be people on one side, especially if the record was good. If this was from week 1 to week 7 or 8, that would be just saying Tim Tebow. This guy is Tim Tebow. The people that don't want to believe, they're not going to be convinced from yesterday's performance. They're not going to be convinced from watching the fourth quarter because it looked like the Broncos offense was going to absolutely blow the game for them. They're not going to be convinced by the stat line. So I think that would be a much smaller percentage of people, Ryan. Yes, I do agree. But I think people would look at the record and say, man, this guy's just winning.
Yeah, I think so too. And here's the other thing I want to point out. The difference, one of the many differences, but the big difference between a lot of NFL quarterbacks, including Drew Lock and Patrick Mahomes, is the ability to overcome negative plays. And so I can go back and I can dig up what Drew Lock would have done if they didn't drop the ball. But the reality of it is Patrick Mahomes, it wouldn't have mattered if they dropped the first one because he would have just made the same play the next time and they would have caught it. So I was actually surprised to see how many of these plays happened on third down where Drew Lock didn't have a chance to go back and avenge it, but it wasn't all of them. And so that was one thing I thought is, okay, what makes an offense and a quarterback really great is their ability to overcome negative plays, whether that's a sack, whether that's a penalty, whether it's 3rd and 20, which Drew Lock did convert one of those yesterday, or whether it's a drop when you have 2nd and 10 from the 11-yard line and you get a drop in the end zone. The great ones and the successful ones are able to make that next play. And that's, to me, is the big next jump for Drew. That, we talk about margin of error so much. And I said yesterday, the Broncos' margin for error with Drew Lock and Phillip Lindsay and the defense playing well went up dramatically. But it's still not high on the offensive side of the ball. They just aren't good enough on offense to be able to overcome a drop. And that's the next step. But again, it's really important to note that Drew Lock hasn't even played half a season worth of games. He has an opportunity to get there, and I'm a big believer that he will.
Well, and here's what's very interesting, too, is against the Jets, you played the worst team in the league. So you got to see how your team fared against the worst team in the league. You didn't have Drew, so it wasn't a great example, but you still won. Against the Patriots, borderline playoff team. I think we all agree that, they have a chance to make the playoffs. Maybe they finish 7-9, 8-8. So you got to see against an average to maybe above average team how they played. And you know what? The Broncos got to win both of those games on the road. Now you turn around next week and you get to play the elite. You get not just in a team, but in a quarterback. So it's going to be a great gauge because the Broncos have won against the bad team. They've won against the potential playoff team, 8-8 team. And now you get to see how they stack up against the Chiefs. Ryan, if the Broncos get blown out against the Chiefs, it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be a huge surprise. And it shouldn't then come down and say, well, all the Broncos can do is beat the Jets. No, because the Chiefs are on a whole nother level here. If the Broncos keep up with the Chiefs, and let's say they lose by 3, wow, then that is impressive that they are able to hang with the elite, something that they frankly just have not been able to do consistently since Peyton Manning left. So I love that we get this progression 1, 2, and 3. And next week is at home against the Chiefs, who are coming off a short week.
Yeah, that Chiefs game is going to be an interesting litmus test. And I use that term litmus test lightly because it's not like a if you win, you're legit, and if you lose, you're garbage. But it is a can you compete? Because they just showed that, like I said, 2 weeks ago, everyone thought the Patriots were one of the best teams in the AFC. The Broncos just showed they could go on the road and beat them. And beat them pretty handily, and probably should have blown them out again if they make a couple more plays. The Chiefs are a different animal. They are the elite of the elite when it comes to when it comes to the league right now. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. They're a team that everyone expects to win every single game, including tonight on Monday Night Football. You don't have to beat them, but you have to show that you can play with them. Last season, the Broncos weren't even close. In fact, the Chiefs brought in their backup quarterback and still blew out the Broncos. So you have to show that you can compete with them. And if you I'm talking play them close for 3 quarters. Keep the game within reaching distance for 3 quarters. I think you come out of that game feeling a lot better as a team. The Broncos aren't there yet. Not with their quarterback, not with their defense, not with their offense, not with their coaching. But you got to show that you are at least on a path towards being able to compete with them. One last thing I want to say on Drew Lock that I don't think people are acknowledging. And Zach, you were a big purveyor of this stat heading into this game this week. Bill Belichick against first or second year quarterbacks heading into yesterday's game had won 22 out of his last 23 games against first or second year starting quarterbacks. Zach, no first or second year quarterback in the league right now, no quarterback in the league right now when they were a first or second year quarterback ever had gone to Foxborough and won a game. Drew Lock is the only quarterback in the league right now that's active that can say he went to Foxborough in one of his first 2 seasons and won a football game. The only other quarterbacks who can say they've even beat the Patriots in their first or second year at home, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Lamar Jackson. Now, I'm not trying to say that because the Broncos won the game, which we know is very much on the back of their defense, that Drew Lock, deserves to be in the echelon of those quarterbacks. But what I am saying is, when you're looking at that stat line, understand that you are going up against the single best coach in NFL history at making life difficult on young quarterbacks.
And on top of that, Ryan, Drew is the youngest quarterback to ever win in Gillette Stadium. Ever. So, just to add to that, and that's why I think this is more than just a tweet. It's why we're talking about it today. We talked about it yesterday. I wrote a detailed article explaining all of this yesterday because the stat line is straight up terrible. Terrible. But you do have to account for the 4 touchdowns that hit receivers' hands and body, 3 of them on separate drives, the drop by Deshaun Hamilton. You do have to account for those things, and you have to account for the degree of difficulty that this game is going up against Bill Belichick, just how he torments young players and what Drew Lock was able to do by doing that. And Ryan, if the Broncos aren't able to convert field goals into touchdowns moving forward, they're probably going to lose 80% of games that they play from here on out. But if they start converting and only start converting some, we didn't talk about yesterday how, man, what if the Broncos get 7 touchdowns instead of six field goals? No. What if the Broncos get 2 touchdowns instead of 2 field goals? This game is a blowout. The Broncos will be able to compete with the Chiefs. The Broncos that I saw yesterday will be able to compete with the Chiefs in 6 days if they're able to convert half of those. Now, if maybe even if they convert 2 of them, but if they're not able to, then it's going to be a long day because Patrick Mahomes is not going. I mean, we saw that you can beat the Patriots with field goals. I guarantee you will not be able to beat the Kansas City Chiefs with field goals. But I saw it where the Broncos were able to get in those positions. They were able to put themselves in scoring positions. They had the chances. The ball was there at times. So the hope and the excitement is through the roof from what I saw from Drew yesterday.
Absolutely. And you're right. If the Broncos, if Drew Lock makes those exact same throws next week and the receivers just make the catches, the Broncos will be in the game. It's not like obviously you can get pass rush, but I'm saying once the ball is in the air, those throws were perfect. All the receiver had to do was catch them. It's not like you can say, oh, well, the Chiefs, he won't be able to make those throws. No, as long as, they protect him the way they did, which huge helmet sticker to the offensive line for being able to protect Drew, give him time to make those throws downfield, which has been a huge problem in the early goings of his career. They will, if they make those plays, they'll be in the game. Like, it's as simple as that. And I think that's got to be a comforting feeling for the Broncos as they go into this week of preparation. It's just like, all we got to do is make the plays. They're out there for us. It's not as if they're not out there. Just make the plays, and we're going to be in this game. I think that's got to be what the coaching staff is telling them. I think that's what Drew Lock is telling his offense. And that has to be a really good feeling for this team as they prepare for this game against quite arguably the best team in the league. One thing that may help them in the red zone, I'm not going to say categorically it will, because we saw them have red zone issues against the Titans. But one thing that may help them is getting Noah Fant back. And both of us expect that Noah Fant will play this weekend against the Chiefs. And Zach, I want to ask you this. Are we already ready to see the Noah Fant, Albert Okwuegbunam package? Because whenever I've thought about that, I've thought about it like next year, the year after, in the future. I was kind of surprised to see Albert Okwuegbunam come in and be such a big part of the game plan and be such a big contributor. I hate that he didn't have like the best first game for any tight end ever, which I think might have been possible if he just made a few more plays. But are we ready to see that this Sunday?
I don't care if we're ready. I don't care if Pat Shurmur is ready, if Vic Fangio is ready, if you're ready, Ryan. I don't care, because Drew Lock is ready for it. And he showed me that yesterday by just putting all his confidence in Albert O time and time again. Oh, yeah, you had a really tough pass. That first one was really, really tough. Would have been incredibly hard. He said, I don't care that you missed that. Here's another one. It kind of went through your hands in the back of the end zone. I don't care. Here's another one. I mean, he just kept going his way. So Drew Lock, we knew that he loved him. Through 17 touchdown passes to him, Drew's final 2 seasons at Missouri. Drew's ready for him. So you know what? You give your quarterback what he wants, and that is Noah Fant and Albert Okwuegbunam on the field at the same time. And Ryan, it shouldn't be hard for the Broncos to convince themselves that is the right thing to do. Not just from what I said, but also Jake Butt, a great story. He can play in this league, but what I saw from Albert Okwuegbunam, he was getting more open than Jake Butt has this season. And Nick Vannett, in terms of a receiver, he's not going to get it done. So when you want a couple receiving tight ends on the field, it's Albert Okwuegbunam is your number 2. So absolutely, I'm putting those 2 guys on the field right away against Kansas City next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And quickly, to anyone who's watching on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, hit us with a like on the video, hit us with a subscribe on the right. If you want to get real saucy with it, hit us with there's a little bell next to that subscribe button. That sets you up to get alerts anytime we go live from this channel. So hit that one as well. Yeah, exactly. But Zach, I liked what you said. I don't care who is ready for it. And I don't even care if Drew's ready for it. If you want to beat the Chiefs, and Drew is ready for it. If you want to beat the Chiefs, you got to throw something special at them. And I think this is what they have. The Broncos have this in the bag. Just try it. What do you have to lose? Put both of those guys out there. I know Albert Okwuegbunam. I'm really trying not to say that. I know Albert Okwuegbunam is not a great run blocker, and you are going to have to run the ball well to beat this team. So you don't have to do it on every play. But mix it in. Mix this in, because I want to see if a defense can defend it. I don't know if they can, and I want to see that up close and personal. Okay, so, who are you going to use? Who are you going to use? You're going to use your best stopper. If Noah Fant is having a good game, you're going to use your best stopper to try and to stop the ball from going to him. That's probably Tyrann Mathieu.
Yep.
Okay, then what? So what are you going to do on Albert Okwuegbunam? Because it's the same mismatch. It's the same mismatch no matter who you put on him. Yes, Noah Fant's a better player, but the mismatch is the same. You're talking about a 6'5" guy who can run right past you. And that's exactly what both of these guys are. So I think they have to pull it out this week if Noah Fant's healthy. And you can see which way it goes. Maybe because he's the more healthy one, you're putting Albert Okwuegbunam in the positions to make those plays, and you're using Noah as a bit of a decoy for him, or it's the other way around. And that Noah is going out there and making those plays because they just don't know who to defend. So you have to bust it out this week. It's like, I reference this all the time, but the Dolphins way back when, I don't even remember what year it was. They knew they didn't have a chance to beat the Patriots straight up that year. So they came up with something new, and that's where the Wildcat was born. And they beat them in that game because the Patriots just didn't have enough time to figure out how to stop it. So that's how you surprise a team that's much better than you. You bring out something that puts them in a position where they simply just don't know how to stop it, and you run it down their throats over and over and over again.
Yep, exactly. And let's say the Chiefs do respect Albert Okwuegbunam just after he got the 6 targets yesterday. Well, then all that's going to do, and they respect Noah Fant, which they should, all that's going to do, Ryan, is then open up Jerry Jeudy, who yesterday we saw needs a little bit of help, to take some pressure off. He had 5 targets, 2 catches for 32 yards yesterday. His worst game in the pros by far. Am I worried about Jerry Jeudy? Absolutely not. I mean, rookies are going to have bad games. Any receiver is going to have a rough couple of games, but that's a guy that you can turn to. Tim Patrick, maybe he's the 4th option that the Chiefs try to take away. Well, we know what he can do when he's throwing the ball back-to-back 100-yard games. And then, of course, Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon out of the backfield. Didn't see much of Phillip Lindsay out of the backfield yesterday. In fact, saw nothing from him out of the backfield yesterday. You're going to have Melvin Gordon back, who I know the coaching staff is at least more comfortable throwing the ball to. So that's another weapon that you add there. So put all of your weapons on the field. If Albert Okwuegbunam isn't up for the task and, he struggles again next week, well, then, you can slowly move him back to more of a developmental year the following week. And especially because you'll be getting KJ Hamler back, and that's okay. But right now, throw everything at the Chiefs right now.
So quickly, Zach, we think Noah will be back. Do you think AJ Boye will be back?
I do think AJ Boye will be back. Not as certain as I am with Noah, though, just because they still have him on IR, but I do think he'll be back.
Do you think KJ will be back?
I don't. I don't. I think he starts practicing this week, and they kind of do that 2-week ramp-up period. And especially with the hamstring, the second hamstring this year, actually the third hamstring this year since he was dealing with one at the combine too, I think they take it 1 extra week.
And this one's really important. Do you think Elijah Wilkinson will be back?
No, certainly not.
Oh, man. That one's... I'm going to continue losing sleep over that. I don't understand how the Broncos coaching staff couldn't see what anyone could see. Okay, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you. Here it is. And this will finish up the live portion of the show. Zach, do you want I'm always interested in people's theories on this. Do you want the Chiefs to win or lose tonight?
Oh,
from
man.
a Broncos perspective, if you're Vic Fangio sitting at home and watching, or Drew Lock sitting at home and watching the game tonight, what do you want to happen?
Oh, man, you want him to win. You want him to win because I can't imagine the fury that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes would be bringing to Empower Field at Mile High if they're going on a 2-game losing streak to 2 AFC teams, one of them being in the division. And now if they lose tonight, you could build the argument that, wow, back-to-back games, maybe the Chiefs have lost something. And what can we learn from both of those losses and stack onto? But I'm too afraid. I'm too afraid of what that would mean. If they win tonight, maybe they ease up a little bit and say, okay, yeah, we know that we're the Super Bowl champs. We know that we just lost one game. We realistically know we're probably going to lose a game or two this season. So now we're going to go beat the Broncos instead of being like super, super focused.
There's so many different ways to view this. The one thing I'll say is I think that the blueprint is already out there. The Patriots showed you how to slow them down on offense, and the Raiders showed you how to expose them on defense. So you don't really need the Bills to show you something, in my opinion. The other thing, though, is is there a rhythm involved with this? And, if the Chiefs lose this one, are they out of rhythm? Is there a chance you can continue to keep them out of rhythm? But the thing that I keep coming back to, and I don't think this affects it. I think that fans always think, and people like us always think, that this affects the eventual result more than it actually does. But one thing that I keep coming back to is Andy Reid has the biggest bag of tricks. And I don't just mean trick plays. I just mean ways to screw up a defense. He has the biggest one maybe ever. And if they are coming off a 2-game losing streak, he's not going to waste any time risking the opportunity of going to 4-3 and, really putting your chances of getting the number 1 seed in jeopardy. He's going to go deep into the bag and just make life miserable for the Broncos. A coach wants to hold those things. If he had it his way, they'd run their base offense and cruise through every team and not have to use any of their tricks until the playoffs or maybe even the Super Bowl. He probably has enough to expend the whole bag in the playoffs and keep a whole extra set for the Super Bowl. So what I don't want to happen is a desperate Chiefs team where they're pulling out 3 or 4 of their special secret plays that they almost they're very confident in are going to result in touchdowns, and the Broncos are just cooked early because they have 3 one-play touchdowns in the first half of the game. So to me, I actually think for this team, maybe more than any others, you don't want them coming in trying to avoid a 3-game losing streak and falling out of the very top of the AFC playoff race.
Yeah, no, you certainly don't want that. And I expect that's what we'll see. I think we'll see that the Chiefs get the win tonight. And maybe, you don't want to be Buffalo tonight. I know Buffalo's coming off their first loss, so maybe they have that same attitude. But, man, I trust the Chiefs' attitude and ability to bounce back more than I do Buffalo's. So, Ryan, it's a 5-point game the last that I saw. I'm taking the Chiefs with the 5.
And the other thing we didn't say here, Zach, is if they lose tonight, you are technically still alive for the division, but I think both of us don't think that's kind of a moot point. I don't think the Broncos should be much more worried about the wild card positioning than they are worried about trying to catch the Chiefs for the AFC West.
Exactly. But what's crazy, if the Chiefs lose tonight and the Broncos beat them, they're only half a game back of the Chiefs.
That is very crazy. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for the live portion. Of course, we're going to keep rolling on the podcast side, but to everyone who listened on the live side of things, thank you guys.